Good afternoon. I provide a warm welcome to all of the U of M alumni joining us today from around the world. I'm Dr. Tiffany Mara, Executive Director at the Center for the Education of Women, and also your moderator for today's event. I'm excited to host this event as CEW exists today because of a unique partnership between three faculty wives, Louise Kane, Jean Campbell, and Jane Leichert, the Alumni Association and Alumni Council. It was 1963 and the Alumni Council committed to raising starter funds for the creation of the center to support women returning to higher education. Once started, the Alumni Association marketed the center to women across the state, helping to build a case for CEW in perpetuity. Our organizations have continued to provide resources and services to alumni in meaningful ways, just as we are today. It's appropriate that today we partner to discuss the disproportionate effect of the pandemic on women, especially women of color, and strategies for reversing the She-cession. A few notes before I introduce our panelists. This is an interactive webinar that's being recorded. The recording will be shared in a follow-up email. Please submit questions through the Q&A feature in your toolbar, and we'll do our very best to answer your questions throughout this event. I'm very excited and very grateful to have Dr. Lynn Wooten, Natalie Paul, and She-cession with us as we delve into our topic, Reversing the She-cession, a moderated conversation on empowering women and getting back to work. I'd like to share a little bit about Dr. Wooten, Natalie, and Jill. After introductions, I'll ask questions specific to each panelist, after which we'll move to questions from the audience posted through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Our first panelist, Dr. Lynn Perry Wooten, is a seasoned academic and an expert on organizational development and transformation. She became the 9th president and first African-American to lead Simmons University on July 1st, 2020. In addition to her scholarship and numerous books and article publications, Dr. Wooten has specifically written on the topic of women in the workforce and the impact of the pandemic on women. Our next panelist, Natalie Paul, recently made the jump to LinkedIn to serve as a senior recruiter for their global business organization after a decade at Google's Ann Arbor office in sales and recruiting. At Google, Natalie was a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, working to increase Black and Latinx hiring at the leadership level. She's a proud graduate of the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. She loves to discover talent with rich experiences and unconventional backgrounds, and is a testament to a varied career journey. She-cession is partner recruiting at Green, Levin, Snyder, a legal search firm based in New York. Upon graduating from the University of Michigan, Jill attended Georgetown University Law School and practiced law for 2 years. She then joined Goldman Sachs and transitioned to human resources, where she managed various recruiting programs. After a decade at Goldman Sachs, Jill left the workforce to be home with her children. 14 years later, Jill participated in Morgan Stanley's Return to Work program, a 12-week internship for women who have taken a career break and want to relaunch their careers. Jill worked at Morgan Stanley in human resources until joining her current firm in 2020. She's had an exciting journey back. Before we jump into questions for each panelist, it's important to recognize that the pandemic has illustrated the disproportionate burdens many women shoulder in caring for children or aging parents, and highlighted the vital roles they have long played. As the economy has rebounded and employers have posted record high job openings, many women have delayed a return to the workforce, willingly or otherwise. This, coupled with the technology revolution and many other trends, have and continue to cause significant challenges in the career journeys of our alumni and women in all of our communities. As you listen to our panelists, please consider how we can continue this conversation with you, as how we might understand the challenges you face, build bridges among our vast alumni network, and support you in your career growth. I'm going to share with you a few data points as food for thought. In spring of 2020, roughly 3.5 million mothers with school-aged children either lost jobs, took leaves of absence, or left the labor market altogether. This is per data from the Census Bureau. Women are even more burned out now than they were a year ago, and the gap in burnout between women and men has nearly doubled. This was published in a McKinsey report titled Women in the Workplace. At CEW and the Alumni Association, we've seen an increase in women seeking professional development. At a recent CEW Career and Education focused conference hosted by the Women of Color Task Force, over 1,300 individuals registered for the event, a new high, while the Alumni Career Program has had over 1,800 registrants in their career webinar series this year. The availability of jobs across sectors makes now an ideal time for women to consider the next step in their career. Our goal today is to provide you with actionable strategies for defining, considering, and taking the next step in your career journey. Dr. Wooten, I'm going to begin with you for our first question. I've touched on some of the trends and metrics in the introduction, but I know this topic is something both personally and professionally important to you, and one you've written about extensively. What are some of the key trends of this She-cession you have seen and written about, and how they're impacting our alumni?
Tiffany, thank you. And I've been studying women in the workforce since I was a PhD student at Michigan and for 2 decades as a faculty member at the University of Michigan before I left. And during the pandemic, my family, we like to play Scrabble. We like to talk about words. We were seeing words like the bubble and the cancel culture and social distancing. But then I started seeing another new word, the she-cession. I was like, what is this she-cession? I'm tired and I'm working, but what is this she-cession? And started to ask myself, especially as an action researcher, what is it? What are the causes and what are the implications? And, we want to blame it on the pandemic, but I've been doing this research for 25 years, and I think it really has been a smoldering crisis of what we're seeing. And the pandemic hit, and women said, I'm tired of the way I've been working. I've been juggling caring responsibilities. I'm not achieving my career goals. There are lots of things going on that are making it difficult for me to work. This is the first time in our history where we have seen women really retreat from the workforce. Normally, when the economy is bad, women stay in the workforce, they hang it out. The industries that they work in are doing okay. But this time we're seeing, and the question became, as an action researcher, what's going on here? As your introduction said, first of all, the jobs are starting to rebound. And for many people, they are rebounding, but we're still seeing some systematic trends. So we know for women of color, we know women who are in service occupations, and we know younger women, such as our young alum, are struggling for a variety of reasons. The workforce has not adjusted since the pandemic to accommodate these women. Likewise, and I think Jill will talk about this, some women who just have lots of caring responsibilities and in the sandwich generation are exiting also because they can't take it. So today, what I want us to think about is, okay, what are the systemic changes? What can we do as individuals, as organizations, and as society? Some ones I want to throw out are, one, we need to make our workforce very flexible for women to enter and exit when they need to. So we need that life course perspective. If I have to take care of a parent or a child or just burn out. We need systems where women feel they are being cared for, and they're not hitting that concrete glass ceiling. We're not seeing that leaky pipeline that we're seeing is so important. And then we need education and professional development to boost the confidence of women. We know from data and from the research I do, men will apply for jobs. They'll repivot, they'll rebrand. I think Natalie can tell you about LinkedIn. And they might say, you know what, I only have 50% of the skills. But women will not go for that unless they have 95% of the skills. And so how do we boost the confidence? So there are a lot of things going on that explain the she-cession. But you know what, in my Scrabble game now, it's not the she-cession, it's the she-recovery that I'm playing in Scrabble.
Yeah, no, when you think about policies within higher education, within corporations, you had mentioned like the flexibility to enter and exit. What are the policies that get in the way of that?
That we look down on women when they exit and enter. We don't make enough time for maternity leave or elder care or just well-being. And most organizations have not been intentional on how they mentor, coach, and sponsor women in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what have been some successful examples you've seen where companies have adjusted and flexed?
A lot of successful examples are, remote work. great example. And not only remote work, but 4-day work week. When we see programs that are universally designed to elevate women, but then everybody, so formal mentoring programs, career tracks and parallel career tracks, if I want to stay in the workforce for 30 years or take time off, have been good, and we'll talk about some of those. And just partnering with women, because no matter how much we've advanced in society, women do the majority of caring responsibilities, and we need things. I was talking to a friend who works at Delta, and she was telling me about the great benefits that she has for elder care. You know, we don't think about, at least we're starting, you know, my kids are 27 and 20, and I'm starting to see the advancements in childcare on the younger end of the spectrum. Summer camps, elder care, the whole life course we have to consider in the workplace. And those confidence boosters that women need. Oh,
for sure. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Wooten. Natalie, now working for LinkedIn, two major organizations, Google and LinkedIn. What trends have you seen, and how are you addressing them from a recruiter's perspective?
That's a great question. So some of the trends that I've really seen, I mean, of course, just like we both have been talking about, is women are taking on a lot of the burden. So a lot is on the shoulders of women, and not only is it, you know, been the great resignation, but also the great, what we call LinkedIn, the great reshuffle. I think what I've seen is throughout the challenges and stress of the pandemic and all of this that women are carrying in terms of responsibility, a lot of women are taking time to just rethink their careers and what is most important to them. As simple as, what are my personal values and what's most important to me? In talking with a lot of women and a lot of candidates, flexibility, to be honest, is usually top of the list. Not only creating space for themselves, which they haven't had space for themselves in many situations, but also creating space so they can care for their family and loved ones, and enjoy not only their work, but their life, and have more balance. I think right now, with a lot of companies returning to office, and you know, in the space that I'm in, candidates are returning to business travel. The moms who are able to maybe pick their children up from school or take lunch to their parents who might be elderly, in a 9-to-5 schedule, and with business travel, that might not be the case anymore. So we're seeing, you know, personally, I'm seeing a lot of scrambling, a lot of reassessing, pivoting, thinking about, well, what's next for me, and what do I want to, you know, what is the company or employer or business that would be more flexible in allowing me to place my values at the top of the list and what's important for my life.
Yeah, now, Dr. Wooten had hit on something, which is kind of, how do we normalize this idea of taking a parental leave or a maternity leave or time off to care for an elder? I know LinkedIn has made some really interesting progress and innovation in this space, some of which are just changing terminology. Can you talk through a few of those changes that LinkedIn has made to normalize this status a bit more than it has in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of ways that I think LinkedIn is trying to destigmatize a career break. We do have an official career break aspect where you can add it into your profile. This shouldn't be, you know, like a stigma. This shouldn't be a something that you should feel bad about. In fact, it's a way for you to highlight things that you've accomplished, or learning, or development, or things that you've been doing, whether it's caring for a sick parent, a child. I think just bringing that to the forefront, and rather than trying to hide it, this is, in my opinion, not something that you should feel like you need to hide. And so LinkedIn is doing a lot around that, and helping women to keep their profile up to date, and not have those breaks in there. There's also a new feature, and many people may have noticed, there's an open to work, kind of like an arch that goes on your profile picture, that also just destigmatizes across the workforce, and saying, you know, it's okay to ask for help, or show that you are actually looking for work. And this is actually a really useful tool for recruiters. So just little things like that, I think, helping to normalize a lot of these challenges or different situations that people might be in.
Yeah, thanks. Those are great new innovations in LinkedIn. Jill, as someone who's personally experienced a career break of 14 years, can you tell us a bit more about your story? And when you returned, what was the greatest challenge that you overcame?
Yes. So Tiffany, as you mentioned, I took a 14-year career break and then went back to work. When Louise reached out to me a few months ago and discussed this panel, I said I'd be happy to join and share my story. And truthfully, the return to work journey is very near and dear to my heart. And I appreciate when other women are sitting in this kind of situation and trying to figure out how to take that next step. My story is that I graduated from Michigan in '88, which is forever ago. And not knowing what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I went to law school, as so many of us did, and quickly realized that that really wasn't the best fit. And I had the good fortune of then moving over to Goldman. As you mentioned, the head of recruiting there was looking for a lawyer. So I was able to transition from law to HR. And it was, I had a great 10-year run there. I had 2 young kids, and I was lucky to be able to work at one point 4 days a week when I had my 2 children. Based on a restructuring that Goldman did, they kind of eliminated the flexible work arrangements, and I was faced with a decision about going back full time with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I took a severance package and thought that'll be great. I'll just kind of be home for a couple of years. And then life happened and I had another kid and we moved from the city to Westfield, New Jersey. And over the years, I often thought about, going back to work. And for me, the greatest challenge was technology. I had very basic technology skills when I was working and was in school. And as time went on, I felt the gap widened and it was really hard to figure out how to dip my toe back in. Soon after we moved to Westfield, I reconnected with a former colleague who was doing the returnship program at Goldman Sachs, which is similar to Morgan Stanley's return to work program, and is all about and very focused on women who have taken a career break and want to relaunch. And it was very appealing. And I ended up, I applied to Morgan Stanley and did that 12-week program. And it was one of the most daunting things I've ever done. It was very empowering on many levels and a great gateway. And I think that to Natalie's point, one of the most important pieces of that experience for me was just normalizing the term career break and not feeling that you're coming back to work after having taken time, whether it was to take care of children or parents or whatever it is, that you had to make an excuse for that. Instead, a career break was just the cornerstone of the program, and the women all were very similarly situated and able to kind of embrace that as the jumping off point. So I was at Morgan Stanley for, I think, 5 years, and then in September of 2020, was asked to join the legal search firm that had placed me years ago at Goldman Sachs. So I've kind of now come full circle, and it's, as you said, been quite an interesting journey back.
As you mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned that the reducing of stigma, being around a cohort of people who were in a similar situation actually helped you emotionally in the return. Were there other aspects of the program that really stand out to you as meaningful?
Yeah, I think first of all, this was a very important diversity initiative at Morgan Stanley, as it is at many firms across different sectors. I think, again, touching upon something Natalie said, it was important to realize that a lot of the life experience that you bring to the job is very valuable, and not to discount that. And Lynn had touched upon that as well. I think that we too often get kind of caught up in this idea that if we are out of the workforce for some reason, we are less than. And I remember vividly during our training session, there were a lot of very senior people of the firm who came to speak and share with us how important this program was and how much they were excited, how excited they were. And at one point I said, oh my gosh, like what if they think, they're getting a Mercedes and I'm only a Jetta? And it kind of became our tagline. And you really, we're not Jettas, but even if you are a Jetta, you're a great Jetta. Like you just have to kind of lean in and embrace some of the wisdom and judgment and life experience that you bring back to the job. And I would say that this whole iRelaunch platform, which Carol Fishman Cohen was very much a part of and pioneered, is really extraordinary in a lot of ways, because it gives you the opportunity to, again, feel like you're part of something that's exciting. You don't have to feel vulnerable, and it gives you this iRelaunch conference that takes place, used to take place at least in October, I know, and I believe it's also offered in the spring, is an amazing networking opportunity and a platform where you can learn get some of the important tools as far as branding or rebranding, networking, and some of the things that Natalie had discussed. So there are some really good resources that are available as part of this journey if you go this route.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a comment from the chat, which is Amy on the chat. She says, I drive a Jetta and love it. So
I have a Jetta too, and I love it.
It's a distraction, but I love that comment. So Natalie, going back to you for a second, it seems like, through the pandemic, technology changed so much. Like we now have people in our office who are Zoom experts who never even knew the tool existed before the pandemic. And here we are now, with a pro in the office. How can people who are returning to work kind of catch up? I know LinkedIn Learning is there. Like what types of supports are there for people to kind of get back into the game of technology and what it means in the workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is actually LinkedIn had made a lot of their learning courses free over COVID, and so those are still available. We will share those out, but there's a lot of resources just in terms of, yes, how do you show up for a virtual interview? How Zoom courses, LinkedIn profile courses, how to rock your profile and make it amazing, how to connect. I think one thing is really important is just we're not meeting in person anymore, or there's, we're not going to big events so much anymore. So how do you digitally network and create your network? So I think this is really important for women. There's this intimidation factor, I think, and LinkedIn really, I think, helps create opportunity for everyone, where you can reach out, like you can reach out to Dr. Wooten, you can reach out to someone, you can reach out to me, you can ask for advice. Sorry, don't spam anyone, but no, you can reach out, and most of the time, women are really helpful. Women love to help other women. You shouldn't be afraid to ask for advice. Ask if it's someone you admire, bring some value to the conversation. And I think it's kind of democratizes networking, because you don't have to be in a specific location. You don't have to go to a specific evening event. You can be on your couch as a mom, and you can reach out to someone that inspires you or someone that you want to connect with for a future job opportunity. So I would encourage women to do that. As scary as it might be, you'll see that people will get back to you and respond.
So this is just another aspect of what it has meant in us returning to an office, but what culture changes have you experienced as a result of returning back to the office?
It's interesting. It is a very different world than the world I left so many years ago. I remember, when I was at Goldman Sachs, people used to leave voicemails. I came back to two computer screens, and it was just very different. I think one of the even back 7 years ago, one significant change was that there was a remote work component that really was not as prevalent. So things had started to really evolve in the time that I was out. Obviously, COVID has so significantly changed that. And I think one of the positive takeaways is that there's a new appreciation and an understanding for being able to work remotely and not have to be in the office 5 days a week. But even back then, I saw a shift.
For me, I'm seeing a culture that is finally starting to accept people bringing their whole self to work and to work in flexible environments. So we saw pets on Zoom and children, people signed off for lunch. The paradigm is changing about who we are and how we work. And I've been preaching work-life integration, but now we're seeing it. Also, we're seeing a diversity across dimensions of diversity. I think that the big quit or the repivoting and all of those type of things are really making people step up and say, a variety of people can do these jobs. And we want to embrace different forms of diversity as we build our workforce.
I want to piggyback off of that. I think that's one thing that I've seen tremendously at LinkedIn is we allow people to work remotely. And it has expanded our ability to hire diverse backgrounds, candidates from all over the country with different life experiences, different families, different cultures. That wasn't always the case. Big tech companies are in California and they hire majority of the people in California. There's very little diversity to some extent. And so I think for people on the call, I would encourage you, if you are considering a career pivot and looking for something remote, to use the remote feature. There's a filter on LinkedIn where you can look for jobs and select remote. But I'd also encourage you to apply for jobs that might not be posted as remote. And once you speak to a recruiter, talk about that possibility. Because actually our technology has not caught up with the times yet, as surprising as it might sound. All of the platforms that companies use to post jobs, at this point, a lot of them don't allow for a remote option. And so you have to tie it to a job location in many ways when you post jobs. And so it might be posted for a location, but I know it's a technicality, but I'd encourage you to look for those opportunities because it really opens the world up. For me, being in Ann Arbor, I had a great job at Google. It's fantastic, but there's only so many jobs in Ann Arbor within Google, and there's hundreds of roles in Mountain View, California. I was never able to apply for those. At LinkedIn, I can apply to any role in any location as a remote worker. So I'll stop talking, but I think, just to kind of continue on that conversation of not being afraid to raise your hand for opportunities that you find.
I would love to add to that as wearing my recruiting hat, because it is quite striking how so many jobs, and again, I do partner recruiting for law firms, but so many roles now are location agnostic, and it is a completely changed world. And yes, you want to always make sure to ask, because I think that there is a flexibility and an openness. And again, part of this COVID experience was that people can be remote and doing everything that they had done in person. And that is one of the benefits, to have that additional flexibility. Teams are built very differently now, and employers, I think, are much more realize that they need to be more flexible, and they have an opportunity to reach out to people beyond a specific city.
Jill and Natalie, I want to echo what you say. Any woman who's on this Zoom meeting today, just apply for the job. Just get your name out there. You're trying to pivot. You see your dream job. And then throughout the process, negotiate what you want. This is what our men counterparts do. So it may not say remote work, but everybody's so really now, there's a dire for good employees that people will negotiate anything.
Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Wooten, to your point, so for those in the audience, Dr. Wooten was on the hiring committee for me for the position I'm currently in. And I had seen the posting and completely thought, wow, what a cool job that would be, but no one's gonna ever choose me. Like, they're doing a national search, there's no way I'll ever get selected. Until like 2 people told me, why don't you apply for it? And there's that old adage, like, women, it takes 3 people telling you before you run for office. It's true, like we eliminate ourselves from so many different opportunities because we just don't think that we have all that's needed. And now here I am in this job. So I'm really glad that the 2 people encouraged me to apply. I'm going to turn it back a bit to stats a little bit and how, reasonable requests. So I hope all 3 of you will chime in on this one. So women account for 53.6% of overall net job losses since the beginning of the pandemic, with Black and Latina women facing even higher unemployment rates. A segment of women don't have the financial means to take a break from the workforce and have been balancing full-time employment with caregiver responsibilities. What advice do you have for this population? And what are reasonable requests they can make of their employers to help them balance their responsibilities of work and home?
I want to lead with a line from Remember the Titans. It's your time. It's our time. And go back to what I just said. You can negotiate a lot now in the work environment that you could not negotiate in the pandemic. So if I'm one of the women that you're talking about in statistics, I also see in our chat, we have some women who are re-entering because of retirement and other things. Think about what you want in the workplace. Flexible work arrangements, remote, support for caring responsibility, and start to identify employers that have what you want. Do a vision board. Think about what your dream employer is, and then look for it. The other big things about the women you identified in the statistics are invest in yourself. Have a roadmap and a learning plan for professional development if you need to go back to school, the skill sets that you need to pivot the job. So a professional development learning plan to get where you want. And then finally, something Natalie said, make connections. Every woman needs a mentor, you need a sponsor, and you need an informal coach. And now in the world of Zoom, you can find these people. I mean, I was making connections with random people 25 years ago, way before Zoom and any of this technology. But if you just email someone, if you reached out on LinkedIn, very few women will say no to you. Women like to mentor, they like to lift as we climb. So create that personal board of directors to get you where you want to get in your career. So those connections are important.
Yeah, can you define what a personal board of directors is?
Yeah, you know, a personal board of directors are those people, your kitchen cabinet, your girlfriends, your posse, that can give you advice on your career. And I want to talk about, Natalie, your example, making connections. I'm speaking at a big conference next week, and through LinkedIn, people know that I'm speaking at this conference, and several people have asked me to, would you talk to me after your presentation? There's a group of professionals. Would you have lunch with our group of professionals? So make those connections to achieve your career goals and your career pivots.
I agree. And I think that there is an opportunity to really have much more of a voice. There's a huge war for talent. I think it's interesting, even within the associate population at law firms, how much more vocal, again, these are the more junior team members are very vocal about the comfort, about, the hybrid work situation. There are conversations that would have never happened before. So the only way to know is to really use your voice. And I think that that women are very happy to help with, to take the time and when they have a shared experience to be available for those conversations. I found that very much, during my time going back to work.
I had one, I don't know if I don't want to, if you have questions, let me know. In terms of Tiffany, what you said, and not feeling like you were 100% qualified or just intimidated by the role that you applied for. I think it's one of those things where there's in your mind, right? There's always, and realistically, there's always someone who could maybe do it better, or maybe someone who is more qualified, but it doesn't mean that they're going to do it like you. And I always encourage people, especially people with like varied career paths or trying to make a pivot into a whole different career and very diverse experience, is to focus on like what's unique about you, because at the end of the day, all of those diverse experiences really make you a much more interesting and unique candidate. And it's about how you bring that to the table and package it. Because yes, there could be someone who's technically more qualified, but they couldn't do it like you can do it. The other thing that I think is really good advice, which I struggle with, is, you know, women are sometimes afraid to shine the light on themselves or seem boastful. And this can show up even in your LinkedIn profile or how you show up, you know, digitally. But really, when you think about it, you know, a fact is a fact. It's not boasting if it's the truth. So if you were the valedictorian, or if you achieved a great success or an award or an honor, you should put that on your profile. If you have a side hustle, if you have a business and you're shy about even sharing that because it doesn't feel like a professional experience that you would consider to put on your resume, I would definitely challenge that. Because if it's something that you're proud of, it's a fact, it's not, you know, it's not boasting. And we should, I don't know, I think as women bring those accomplishments to the surface more than we do.
Yeah, agreed.
Natalie, I definitely agree with you. And Tiffany, I'm going to throw out another buzzword for my business school faculty. I just said personal board of directors. Each person on here today, I'm asking them to think about what is their career brand. And when I talk about this career brand, building upon what Natalie said, and how, if you're going to think about your LinkedIn profile and how you're showing your brand, you want to highlight your education, all of those experiences that you had in your life, inside the work and outside, any expertise that you have. And then you want to make sure you demonstrate your execution capability, the ability to get things done is part of your career brand.
Yeah, you mentioned career change. We have a question from a person who's in the audience about, you know, there are lots of people who are considering taking a break. What are some of the ways personally, like the types of questions or insights that you've had in making that big decision of when the time is right for a change?
I'll be honest, so I don't know if I'm the best at answering this question because I haven't taken a break, but I was considering taking a break over the pandemic. And I actually was considering leaving the workforce because I was so burnt out. My advice is, you know, don't let yourself get to the point of burnout where you feel like you need to recover essentially and take a break. I know that's very difficult though during the pandemic. Many women have had that happen to them. And I think sometimes it's okay to take a break. I think, you know, women are so hard on themselves where you feel like it's not good to take a break, but sometimes you need to take a break to get clarity on what you really want to do or where your energy should be and refocus, and that's okay.
No, and it's good to know that a break is a break. It doesn't, you know, you're not completely shutting the door on your professional world. You're just stepping out at a time that makes sense for you personally. And, you know, again, I think I'm a good illustration of someone who had a very long break. My closest friend from my cohort at Morgan Stanley had not worked for 16 years. And we would joke, I was the CEO of Sacker Inc. You know, like you're doing a lot of important things when you're home, when you're running your family, your kids' lives, or whatever it is that you're doing. And it's a lot about, you know, not to feel that you're a failure in some way, or that you're not going to be able to circle back at some point. And I think that this has been hopefully a bit more normalized over the years, and there are a lot of diversity initiatives at a lot of different throughout different sectors where women who are wanting to come back are sought after. So give yourself permission to step away if you need to.
Yeah, there are a couple questions from people in the audience concerned about upon reentry after years off, potentially being put at a lower level or pay grade, and then also age discrimination for those who have a lot of experience that might be obvious based on their resumes or LinkedIn profiles. What advice do you have regarding making sure you're negotiating fairly, and also to ensure that age isn't coming in as a part of the hiring process?
Is that for me specifically?
Anybody, yeah. This is just an open question.
Look, I would say that one of the quid pro quo for my return to work program was you had many women who had very successful careers, had stepped out, and then kind of the quid pro quo for being brought back in and trained and given the opportunities that you have to step back. You have to step back a bit financially, and you have to kind of rebuild a bit. So there are some realities to that. Not to say, this friend who I just mentioned earlier was just promoted to executive director. She stayed at Morgan Stanley, but there are, again, I think that there are some realities if you have to come back after time away. But you get training and an opportunity that you might not otherwise have.
Bill, I agree that when you come back, you need to give yourself grace, and you need to say, it's okay that I may not be at the title or the comparable salary when I left. But what I've seen, and Jill, you've probably seen this, is when the door opens, takes the opportunity, and there are exponential growth opportunities over the life course. So think long-term, think about how I'm going to get in that door, what I want to achieve, and then where are the growth opportunities 2, 3, 5 years?
Absolutely.
Yeah, mentoring and role models and sponsoring have all come up as a part of the conversation today. Can you discuss the difference between different types of ways that that in your own lives and experiences where different types of mentorship or support from others has supported your career growth? Or where people might look to find those types of relationships?
So a mentor is someone who's really giving you advice, a wide stage. They might be a senior friend or a peer. And a mentor, as Carla Harris said, who's an expert on this, a mentor loves you for the good and the bad. They really do. You can tell them anything. And I've had a constellation of mentors in my life, in higher education, out of higher education, men, women, various ages. A sponsor is someone who's looking out, scanning the universe for that next opportunity for you. And you're usually not in the room when the sponsor is singing your praises. So you want to make sure that the sponsor has your best resume or CV or LinkedIn profile, and that they're elevating you and thinking about that next praise and that promotion. And then a coach is someone, you want to develop. There's a particular area that you want to develop. Maybe you want to re-enter the workforce, or you're thinking about something. And, think about an athletic coach. It's a particular thing that you usually focus on with a coach. I don't know what you say at LinkedIn or what you've seen at Morgan Stanley, Jill, or your firm.
No, I think that having a mentor is a gift and very important. And, some of that is obviously job specific, but it certainly helps when you can find someone who understands you and supports you and can help you kind of move along in your journey. And I had the unique opportunity, because I was part of a program, that we had that additional support that was kind of organic, because we were all doing this, kind of taking the ride together.
Natalie,
finding programs are good things.
Yeah.
Natalie, I saw that you had unmuted.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I think mentors often come around kind of naturally, and it is someone that like you can just speak very openly and honestly with. But that being said, I think when you have mentors or coaches, they can only help you if you are honest and tell them what you want, right? Like if you want to grow your career, if you want to move into your next play, your next role, or you have to share those things and not just hold it within you. And you can put it on your vision board, but you should share your vision board. You should tell people. You have to kind of be vulnerable and let others know, so then they can help you, because they will definitely be your advocate. They will look out for you, but they have to know what you're wanting and what you need.
Right, this is an interesting question. I know I faced this one in my own life. I'll just read it as it's written here. Is there a danger in having blurred lines between work and home? I've heard that we're not working at home, but now living at work, and we can no longer turn off. What practices make for a good work-life balance now that remote is a real possibility?
I think setting boundaries. And this is a skill that for me personally, as a woman, I've had a harder time doing, and saying no, because, I'm the caretaker. I say yes to everyone and like to help everyone. But that's a skill that I think I've developed a lot over the past year in terms of setting boundaries within work, and then making time for home life, because if you blur the lines, you can feel like you're just working all day and night. And for me, I have my little office space and kind of shut that door and keep things separate. But number one, I think, is boundary setting and not letting your work bleed into your time with your family or time for yourself.
Yeah, but I do think the lines have become very blurred. And so, it's terrific to not have the big commute, but you really are in a different kind of reality now. I'm away actually this week on vacation, and I put an out of office on my email, though I'm still seeing my email every day. It's a little bit semantic, but there was a part of me very consciously that said, I'm away with my kids and I am out of the office. And I had a client who yesterday asked me for something, and I said to him, unless it's time sensitive, let me circle back with you next week. And he was very supportive, and I've worked with him for quite a while, but you have to be able to, you have to feel comfortable to say, this is the space that I've, created around my family or whatever personal things are going on, and really try to protect it, because it's a little bit of a different, much more fluid landscape now.
And be clear about how you're going to protect it. I love what you did, Jill, and set those boundaries. And so, and let's be honest with it. Part of the setting boundaries is, as women, we have to manage our calendars, even before the pandemic. And I'll give one example. Last time I worked remote in July, so I could take care of my mother, but I signaled to everybody that I was doing it and why I was doing it and why it was important. And so those type of boundaries are important, and managing your calendar. There've been times when I haven't been good at managing my calendar, and all of a sudden I said, oh my God, I don't have a vacation for my family. So.
Yeah, I had an employee call me out on it in like the first couple of weeks of being at CEW. Because I was preaching work-life balance and let's figure out how to do this. And then one of them stood up and said, but you email us at night, and so we feel like we have to respond. And I was like, oh, lesson learned. Like, so, what you do, Dr. Wooten, makes a difference in those who see what you're doing, and makes it permissible for them to do the same and to verbalize their needs and boundaries.
That's a really great point. And we all have our phones all the time. So I actually have a colleague who emails throughout the weekend, and it kind of gets me into a bit of a spin, and I'm trying to figure out, because that's her time, she can do what she's doing, but it bleeds into my my time of being away from work, and you have to really figure out what kind of messaging and you're inadvertently giving when you're online on, Saturday at 8 p.m. or sometimes it's nice to just in your own head take the space for yourself and the people around you.
All right, we have another question here. An individual left their career about 6 years ago to be home with their children. During this time, the person worked part-time and in term limited positions, and had a VP tell them that they had ruined their career by taking these kinds of non-leadership roles. Do you feel this is true? And is it appropriate to share those roles on their resume and LinkedIn, given their experience?
First of all, I think that's completely wrong and really upsetting to hear. I think in terms of your profile, you own your profile, right? There's no rules or laws saying you need to list everything. You don't have to, you own what it looks like. So I know that can be difficult, but you can leave things off if you choose, or you can add things, you can rename things, right? It's not an employment application that's going to be a background check, right? So if you need to change the title of one of your roles, within reason, to something that is more marketable, I would definitely encourage you to do that. It doesn't mean that you're lying. It just means that you are being smart about the way that you show up and the way that you want to be seen. But I would not take that person's advice, and all of your experience, life experience, whatever that may be, is valuable. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, a lot of people might be considering changing careers, changing fields altogether. How can a person successfully do that and really think about their underlying skills and how they translate, and not just think about the field or the career that they're going from, as in the titles that exist?
Tiffany, I'll start. When I'm working with women who want to change fields, I often say, okay, find someone out there who's your role model in that new field. Look at their LinkedIn profile, their resume, see what skill set they have, and then think about the skill sets you have to do a similar type of job and what would make you marketable. But identifying people, maybe reaching out to them, studying their profile, all of those things that they've done.
There's also a new feature on LinkedIn called skill-based assessments. So you can add your skills to your LinkedIn page. You can also take assessments that are more like a badge that would show up. Those do help for searches if recruiters are searching. So just a little tidbit.
Are there, you mentioned, Natalie, that the tools through LinkedIn, which I actually tried just last week to see what would pop up and what could get highlighted on my LinkedIn profile. Dr. Wooten, you did a lot of work with positive organizational change when you were at the university. Are there other tools that a person might engage with to kind of uncover their underlying skills that they have that might not necessarily align directly with the position?
Yeah, one of the favorite ones is the Reflected Best Self. And you can find that tool in the Center for Positive Organizing website. And basically that particular tool asks you to collect stories about when you are at your best. And then it takes you through a process to understand when you are at the best and the skills and the competencies and the experiences that you're demonstrating them. And you can use those as you start to build your LinkedIn profile and your career brand.
Interesting.
There's been a lot of written Harvard Business Review and other publications about it too.
Yeah, we have a question here about vacation and sick time usage due to increased care responsibilities. Are there studies related to women taking more vacation or sick time as compared to men? As an example, it's not a full career break, but they meet short-term needs. How might this need be met for women? I think this goes back to what you were talking about flexible work arrangements and shorter break flexibility around breaks that aren't necessarily just the defined ones through HR.
You know, there's this whole spectrum of breaks, and women have to think about what's in your portfolio at your organization. There's taking a day off to take care of a sick child. There's taking a week off. There's taking a month off for some type of care and responsibility. There's sabbaticals, there are breaks. And I have to admit that I do see more women in my experience taking off time really for care and responsibility, and everything from a day to a couple months. Very seldom do I hear a male colleague say they're doing it. But I mean, maybe Jill and Natalie have different experience.
No, I agree. And I think, you know, when I was at Morgan Stanley, my oldest daughter had some medical stuff going on. And for maybe 6 months, I worked from home 2 days a week rather than 1 day a week. And there was, you know, fortunately, my manager at the time was a woman. She had kids. Perhaps, you know, that would have been the case irrespective of gender. But, you know, again, it can be situation specific, but I felt supported, you know, during that time when I needed to have extra time at home.
Yeah, I know that in states where parental leave is possible for men or non-mothers, that in those states where it's been implemented, about 10% of non-mothers take advantage of the parental leave in comparison to over 80% of women. So, you know, varies greatly by state, but where there's equitable, you know, a high percentage of pay that's covered as well as time off, it's the greatest usage among women. Yeah, Natalie, good on you. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would encourage women to use their benefits and resources. I think I was afraid to do that. I'll be honest, like at times in my career, because I didn't want to, you know, my male colleagues, I was leading a sales team, you know, you work with a lot of men and maybe they don't take breaks, right? But I think as women, we need to start normalizing that, and we should use, if we have benefits at a good company, we should use them. If we have vacation days, we should use them. Why work for vacation days if we don't use them, right? Like we need to recharge, and I think we need to normalize that more and support each other in that, because women will get burnt out, and we need to take those days off, those times as needed.
We are formally at time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'd like to end with one final question before closing out here. You know, the pandemic, you know, burnout, it's all real. And I'd imagine there's some level of it experienced on most of us on this call. You know, what have you done for self-care for yourselves? And if that feels like an uncomfortable question, what's a book you might recommend to individuals in the audience?
A book for pleasure or a book for self-help?
Doesn't matter.
Self-care. I think we talked about this. I just finished The Lincoln Highway. It was fantastic. So I'm actually been telling everyone under the sun to read that.
Over the pandemic.
Jill, what do you do for self-care, Jill?
I am trying to get back in a good exercise routine. I have found it actually very challenging having a more sedentary life working from home. So I'm trying to get recommitted to that. And, you know, I always have a good glass of wine at the end of the day, which is another way to kind of divide your working from home with your evening from home at times. But I think it's something we have to be really mindful of, because it's a different world. And for all the reasons we discussed, kind of work continues, and there are a lot of other demands. So it's important to carve out the time, definitely. So that's top of my list. And meditation is also on my list. I've not done it, but I'm really focusing on that.
Yeah, Natalie?
I started doing figure skating lessons, which was super scary, and just doing it the first time, actually, like my legs were shaking, but doing something scary that was really fun. And, you know, you're never too old to do something that you enjoyed as a child, and we should all reconnect with those kinds of things. And also for me, over this period, asking my husband more for help, which includes getting the kids off to school when I do my figure skating lesson on Friday morning. So, you know, I've shouldered a lot of the burden, and now I'm trying to get more comfortable and just asking others for help too, so I can take care of myself.
Been even more intentional about spending time with family and friends and creating moments for joy. If it's just a group chat with family or friends, if it's a Zoom meeting or in-person meeting. And of course, I'm excited about the new book I have coming out about women called Arrive and Thrive in the Workplace.
Excellent. Yeah, my self-care strategy is playing hockey. So on the ice, like Natalie, only a little bit more aggressive. We do have a Friday night hockey league in Ann Arbor. Pitch that.
That's amazing.
It has been my absolute pleasure to serve as the facilitator for today's event with all of you. The conversation has been helpful. Please join me in, for those of you in the crowd, please join me in extending a genuine and heartfelt thank you to Dr. Lynn Wooten, Natalie Paul, and Jill Satcher for being with us today. Thank you for your time, your expertise, and for giving back to the University of Michigan community. We're all extremely grateful. We hope you'll find additional resources at the websites that have been posted into the chat. For those of us joining in Southeast Michigan, please consider scheduling a free career and educational counseling session with a licensed CEW counselor by calling the number that'll get posted out in the chat in a second here. And we would like to remind our alumni that a recording of today's session will be sent as a follow-up. Included in the communication will also be additional resources related to this discussion. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions, for being such an engaging audience, for supporting each other through the chat. I loved seeing everybody's comments to each other, as well as to the presenters. I think the Jetta comment was my favorite, though. It even had a smiley attached. So I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed weekend and a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the